On the 1st of January 1912, after nearly a century of failed reforms prompted by Western humiliation, China was officially proclaimed a republic. This critical turning point from monarchism was the result of a succession of revolts and rebellions in addition to an already weakened Qing Empire. In this video essay, we will investigate the causes of this Qing decline and how China became the republic that it is today.
Before the Taiping Rebellion in 1850, the Qing dynasty reigned in China. The Qing state, composed of a group known as the Manchus, who infiltrated the Ming dynasty from beyond the northern section of the Great Wall in 1644, made few policy changes from the previous Ming rule. This society, built on principles of Confucianism and socially organized by the civil service exam, was jolted by the seemingly impartial and equitable reforms called for by the Taiping movement. The Qing dynasty, already in decline due to corruption within the gentry class and the devastating effects of the First Opium War, were met with another layer of complication as they became embroiled with the Taiping. The founder of the Taiping movement, aspiring gentry scholar Hong Xiuquan, met missionaries while traveling after his fourth successive failing score on the civil service exam. Convinced that he was the son of Jesus Christ, Hong set out to gather followers, binding them together through a modified form of Christianity. He was able to procure a large enough force throughout the 1850s to establish his own capital in Nanjing, a feat that transformed his rebellion into a second state seeking control of China. The motives of the Taiping slowly shifted to hate of the scholar gentry and eventually contempt for Confucianism itself. Taiping followers destroyed property of the bureaucrats and Confucian scholarly artifacts. However, the Taiping movement was unable to overthrow Qing rule. The bureaucrats sided with the Qing military forces as they began to feel increasing animosity on the part of the Taiping followers. A direct attack on Shanghai, a major European trading city, meant that the British joined forces with the Qing soldiers to demolish the Taiping resistance. The Battle of Nanjing marked the end of Taiping opposition as well as the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and Hong himself. The Qing dynasty did not escape the war against the Taiping movement unscathed. Its initial dependence on the British for military training and armaments after the two joined forces did not disappear, and Europe became highly involved in Qing politics. This was not, however, the only contributing factor to the weakening of the dynasty.
Although the Qing Emperor had initially encouraged both foreign and domestic trade, the isolationist views rooted in the Mongol conquest of China, the fear that another foreign power could harm China's future, and the European powers pressuring the Qianlong Emperor into increasing foreign trade only served to worsen China's foreign relations. This became a problem due to increasing European demand for Chinese tea and silk products. As opium became a more popular narcotic among the Chinese middle class, it also became a more prevalent form of Western currency, not only because of the increased demand, but also the portability of opium over copper or silver. Soon the Daoguang Emperor began rejecting proposals to legalize and tax opium. Instead, in 1839, the emperor appointed Viceroy Lin Zexu to abolish its exchange. The ban resulted in the burning of some 20,000 chests of opium without compensation and the confinement of foreign merchants. The British, who held a monopoly on the opium trade, retaliated by inflicting a quick and decisive defeat with its superior naval power. By the time of its resolution, China had lost almost 18,000 soldiers, while the British lost a mere 69. As a result, in 1842, China was forced to sign the Treaty of Nanking, which granted Britain 5 treaty ports in addition to the cession of Hong Kong Island. This was the first of an abundance of major defeats by foreign powers inflicted on the Qing Empire. On the 8th of October in 1856, the Second Opium War broke out. The failure of the 1842 Treaty of Nanking to satisfy the British goals to improve trade and diplomatic relations with China, and continued distrust and tension between the two nations were the chief causes behind the outbreak. In addition, the French had also joined forces with the British after the execution of a French missionary by the Chinese local authorities. With Russia and the United States also offering military aid to the British, the Qing Empire, already in a weakened state as a result of the First Opium War and the then ongoing Taiping Rebellion, once again found themselves defeated. The resulting damage included the looting and burning of the summer palaces and the loss of up to 30,000 Chinese soldiers, compared to only 3,000 soldiers from the western states. The result was the signing of several more unequal treaties: the 4 treaties of Tianjin in 1858 and the 3 treaties of Peking in 1860, granting the participating nations, Britain, France, Russia, and the US, 11 more trading ports and permanent embassies in Peking, opening foreign trade, and the leasing of Kowloon to the British.
European forces began to impose their will upon the Qing state increasingly frequently. The leverage they had gained due to their alliance during the Taiping Rebellion and their defeat of the Qing power in the Opium Wars allowed the British to impinge upon the state's policies and begin filling the bureaucracy with those they deemed fit. The treaties the Qing leaders were forced to approve stipulated that the dynasty allowed certain trading partners and continued trade that created more profit for Europe. Furthermore, some of the land of the Qing Empire was given up to the British in the treaty that ended the Opium War. Opium continued to move into the country even after the 1842 treaty, and Britain controlled almost all Qing trade by the 19th century. British ambassadors were even brought into the Qing court, something that was greatly disliked by Qing elite. The process of decline also triggered several last-ditch attempts to stabilize the Qing dynasty. One of the military leaders responsible for the destruction of the Taiping movement, Zhang Guofan, implemented the era of self-strengthening from 1864 to 1894. During this time, the Qing dynasty attempted to modernize military and industrial techniques to keep up with those of their rivals. A similar effort was made in 1898 during the 100 Days Reform. Despite these attempts, the Qing dynasty continued its downward spiral.
The Qing dynasty suffered 2 additional foreign defeats both during and directly after the era of self-strengthening. The Sino-French War broke out in 1884 when the French attempted to expand their control in Vietnam to Tonkin, where the Chinese had control. While the Chinese army fared better during this war than the 2 Opium Wars, arguably defeating the French in Tonkin, the French were able to defeat China at sea, destroying China's new fleet of 11 steamers. The result was the Treaty of Tientsin in 1885, forcing China to withdraw from Tonkin and lower trade taxes with France, while also stipulating that the French remove control from Taiwan and the Pescadores. The First Sino-Japanese War later broke out in 1894 over the control of Korea. The war ended in another brutal defeat, with China losing 12,000 troops and Japan losing only 1,000. As a result, China agreed to sign the Treaty of Shimonoseki in 1895, with the terms that Korea be freed as an independent nation and Taiwan, the Pescadores, and the Liaotung Peninsula ceded to Japan. In addition, China opened 4 more trading ports with Japan and allowed the Japanese to build industries and sell their products in China. Both wars disclosed the inadequacy of China's attempts at reformation and modernization, and prompted a further attempt at reformation in the form of the 100 Days Reform.
Without the continued rebuttal of Qing values at the hands of the Taiping movement, other groups began to spring up. Many secret societies formed, including the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists, sometimes known as the Boxers. The Boxer Rebellion, lasting from 1898 to 1901, was a slightly larger-scale, notable uprising against Japanese involvement in China. It was centered mainly in what is now Beijing and focused on the persecution of foreigners and Christians. The uprising was eventually quelled by a combination of European, American, and Japanese troops, but still greatly destabilized Beijing and cost the already failing Chinese government hundreds of millions in fines. The slow shift away from traditional Confucian ideals and the values of the Qing dynasty became more apparent in 1905 when the final civil service exam was held. The test system had survived hundreds of years and had once been a reliable way to enter the bureaucratic ranks. However, by the 20th century, it was in shambles. Cheating was widespread and easy, bribery was frequent, and administrators were biased. The elimination of the exam marked a turning point in Chinese history and perhaps ignited the flame of revolution.
Finally, during the fall of 1911, the Wuqing uprising and mutiny of the new army sparked a nationwide revolt. China's last dynasty took its final breath, soon to be defeated by its own people in the Republican Revolution. Led by revolutionary Sun Yat-sen, in response to the Qing decline, the revolution consisted of many revolts and uprisings. Many underground anti-Qing groups emerged in an attempt to overthrow Qing rule. Casualties and losses were estimated to be about 220,000 people in total. The Civil War ended in 1912 with a compromise between Sun Yat-sen and the Qing military strongman Yuan Shikai, transferring power to the newly founded Republic of China. However, the newly established national government was still deeply flawed and led to political division, warlordism, and even some attempts at imperial restoration. Even so, October 10th, the date on which the Wuqing uprising occurred, is still commemorated as the People's Republic of China's National Day, because the People's Republic of China considers themselves the true successors of the Xinhai Revolution.
The Qing dynasty was a very important one for China. It was during this dynasty that the events and sentiments that eventually led to an overhaul of the entire Chinese governing system appeared. This piece of Chinese history, though riddled with war and suffering, was vital in terms of assuring the modernization of China and the expansion of its ideals. Both major and minor events during the Qing dynasty contributed to this revolutionary change. The transformation of China into a republic broke the cyclical dynastic pattern that had been utilized throughout Chinese history up until that point, and created a more equitable government.